Hypatia, good afternoon, and it is a very good afternoon, because I have got a new computer. So I will not be pausing for 30 seconds randomly and missing messages and just generally being useless. I shall have to be efficient now. This is rather distressing. And I know that I have not done a reading for you for too long, so we are going to rectify this now. So things we were reading, the Nicol book on Byzantine diplomatic relations. No, not really. No, I don't. It wasn't even fun when I was 21. I suppose it was challenging, but no, not to relax with. What else did we look at? Caves of Gods. I'm going to wait a little bit to do that, because there's something I think might happen first that will make that more interesting. I'm being mysterious. You will have to put get your crystal ball out and see why I'm being mysterious. I will say no more. We were reading something else. Yeah. Oh, the history of Constantinople. Oh, sorry, I nearly shouted there. Can you hear me? Are you deaf? The history of Constantinople, which we will go back to, I am sure. But by process of elimination, what I'm going to do now is the book on Istanbul by Pamuk. And we'll pick it up. He's just reminiscing about his childhood and his imagination that there is another Orhan somewhere anywhere really. And we'll carry on from there. Yes, sorry. Do what you wish. Sorry. Very sensitive to my audience. I have to just stop and let them do what they like for a while. Okay. I think I found it. I'm not sure. Yes, I'm sorry. Right. Okay, it's page 5. It's still on chapter 1. And he's just explained why he doesn't want to go and meet this other Orhan, because he feels that the other Orhan is better than he is, and will not give him any peace of mind to meet him. Here we come to the heart of the matter. I've never left Istanbul, never left the houses, streets, and neighbourhoods of my childhood. Although I've lived in other districts from time to time, 50 years on, I find myself back in the Pamuk apartments, where my first photographs were taken, and where my mother first held me in her arms to show me the world. I know this persistence owes something to my imaginary friend, and to the solace I took from the bond between us. But we live in an age defined by mass migration and creative immigrants, and so I am hard pushed to explain why I've stayed not only in the same place, but in the same building. My mother's sorrowful voice comes back to me. Why don't you go outside for a while? Why don't you try a change of scene and do some travelling? And there's a nice picture of the young Orhan with his mother below that. He continues. Conrad, Nabokov, Naipaul. These are writers known for having managed to migrate between languages, cultures, countries, continents, even civilizations. Their imaginations were fed by exile, a nourishment drawn not through the roots, but through rootlessness. Mine, however, requires that I stay in the same city, on the same street, in the same house, gazing at the same view. Istanbul's fate is my fate. I am attached to this city, because it has made me who I am. Flaubert, who visited Istanbul 102 years before my birth, was struck by the variety of life in its teeming streets. In one of his letters, he predicted that in a century's time it would be the capital of the world. The reverse came true. After the Ottoman Empire collapsed, the world almost forgot that Istanbul existed. The city into which I was born was poorer, shabbier, and more isolated than it had ever been in its 2,000-year history. For me, it has always been a city of ruins and of end-of-empire melancholy. I've spent my life either battling with this melancholy or making it my own. I'm getting a very strong sense of déjà vu here. I think we did this. I really can't remember, but those words, some of those are familiar. Oh, I'll carry on anyway. It's good. At least once in a lifetime, self-reflection leads us to examine the circumstances of our birth. Why were we born in this particular corner of the world on this particular date? These families into which we were born, these countries and cities to which the lottery of life has assigned us, they expect love from us, and in the end we do love them, from the bottom of our hearts. But did we perhaps deserve better? I sometimes think myself unlucky to have been born in an aging and impoverished city, been buried beneath the ashes of a ruined empire. But a voice inside me always insists that this was really a piece of luck. If it were a matter of wealth, then I could certainly count myself fortunate to have been born into an affluent family at a time when the city was at its lowest ebb. Mostly, I am disinclined to complain. I've accepted the city into which I was born, in the same way I've accepted my body, much as I would prefer to be more handsome and better built, and my gender, even though I still ask myself naively whether I might have been better off as a woman. This is my fate, and there's no sense arguing with it. This book is about fate. I was born in the middle of the night on the 7th of June 1952 in a small private hospital in Moda. Its corridors, I'm told, were peaceful that night, and so was the world. Aside from the Stromboli volcanoes having suddenly begun to spew flames and ash 2 days earlier, relatively little seems to have been happening on our planet. That's one of my favourite Ingrid Bergman films, Stromboli. It's very austere. I do enjoy it, and it's got nothing to do with what Pamuk is saying. Sorry. Aside from the Stromboli volcanoes having... Oh no, I've read that. The newspapers were full of small stories about Turkish troops fighting in Korea, rumours spread by the Americans stoking fears that the North Koreans might be preparing to use biological weapons. In the hours before I was born, my mother had been avidly following a local story. 2 days earlier, the caretakers and heroic residents of the Konya Student Centre had seen a man in a terrifying mask trying to enter a house in Langa through the bathroom window. They'd chased him through the streets to a lumberyard. Where, after cursing the police, the hardened criminal had committed suicide. A dry goods seller identified the corpse as a gangster who, the year before, had entered his shop in broad daylight and had robbed him at gunpoint. When she was reading the latest on this drama, my mother was alone in her room. Or so she told me with a mixture of regret and annoyance many years later. After taking her into hospital, my father had grown restless, and when my mother's labour failed to progress, he had gone out to meet with friends. The only person with my mother in the delivery room was my aunt, who'd managed to climb over the hospital's garden wall in the middle of the night. When my mother first set eyes on me, she found me thinner and more fragile than my brother had been. I feel compelled to add, or so I've been told. In Turkish, we have a special tense that allows us to distinguish hearsay from what we've seen with our own eyes. When we are relating dreams, fairy tales, or past events we could not have witnessed, we use this tense. It is a useful distinction to make as we remember our earliest life experience, our cradles, our baby carriages, our first steps as reported by our parents. Stories to which we listen with the same rapt attention we might pay some brilliant tale that happened to concern some other person. It's a sensation as sweet as seeing ourselves in our dreams, but we pay a heavy price for it. Once imprinted in our minds, other people's reports of what we've done end up mattering more than what we ourselves remember. And just as we learn about our lives from others, so too do we let others shape our understanding of the city in which we live. At times when I accept as my own the stories I've heard about my city and myself, I'm tempted to say, "Once upon a time I used to paint. Here I was born in Istanbul, and I understand that I was a somewhat curious child. Then, when I was 22, I began writing novels, without knowing why." I'd like to have written my entire life story this way, as if it were something that happened to someone else, as if it were a dream in which I felt my voice fading and my will succumbing to enchantment. Beautiful though it is, I find the language of epic unconvincing, for I cannot accept that the myths we all tell about our first lives prepare us for the brighter, more authentic second lives that are meant to begin when we awake. I don't know, I guess he's talking about consciousness in the womb. I don't know quite. I'm sure he'll explain. Because for people like me, at least, that second life is none other than the book in your hand. So pay close attention, dear reader. Let me be straight with you, and in return, let me ask for your compassion. That's the end of chapter 1. And isn't it good? So I'll leave it there.